Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're heading into a world I think so many of us love, right? The wizarding world of Harry Potter. Magic, friendship, good versus evil. And we all felt that huge sense of relief when Voldemort was finally defeated. That big final victory.
Definitely, it felt like the end of the story.
But, maybe that victory, maybe it didn't fix everything. What if there's a sort of darker truth still lurking there in the way their society actually works? That's what we want to dig into today. The whole system of wizarding justice. It's pretty unsettling when you look closely.
It really is.
We're talking things like, locking people up without a trial, actual psychological torture sanctioned by the state, a justice system where, yeah, maybe being rich helps a lot.
Mm.
And prejudice, too. Deep-seated prejudice against beings who aren't quite human enough for their standards. So it kind of makes you ask, doesn't it? After you beat the big bad guy, what kind of world are you actually left with?
That's the core question, I think.
Yeah.
Because the books focus so brilliantly on Harry's journey, the heroism, the sacrifice.
Yeah. The personal story.
Exactly. But if you pull back and look at the structures, the power, the justice, or lack thereof, it's frankly disturbing. The system itself is almost this invisible enemy.
And speaking of disturbing systems, Azkaban, can we just start there?
We have to start there.
I mean, Sirius Black, think about that. 12 years, locked away in that nightmare place.
Yeah.
And no trial.
None.
Just swept under the rug. Convenient scapegoat, wrong place, wrong time. Boom. Life over. It's shocking how easily an innocent person was just condemned.
It wasn't just a mistake, was it? It points to something fundamentally broken, a complete failure of due process.
Yeah.
And the key thing to grasp about Azkaban, it's not just a maximum security prison. The sources paint it as more like a slow-motion execution chamber.
Oof.
Yeah. The real horror isn't just being locked up. It's the Dementors. These aren't guards in the normal sense. They're soul-sucking beings, literally. They feed on happiness, on hope. They actively destroy a person's mind from the inside out, leaving them, as the books say, like hollowed-out husks.
So the goal isn't even punishment or rehabilitation, it's obliteration.
Obliteration of identity, that's the point. The state isn't just confining bodies, it's deliberately erasing the person.
Wow. It sounds like something out of, the worst kinds of real-world regimes.
It does. There are uncomfortable parallels, certainly. You think about psychological warfare tactics, the dehumanization in, say, North Korean labor camps, or historically Stalin's gulags.
Right.
The methods differ, obviously, no actual Dementors, but the intent to break the spirit, crush dissent, strip away humanity, it's chillingly similar.
But how did this become normal in a world we're supposed to see as fundamentally good?
Yeah.
Where was the outrage?
That's a great question. And the answer is kind of insidious. It became normalized, especially during Voldemort's first rise. The Ministry, people like Barty Crouch Sr., they were desperate. They felt they had to fight fire with fire. So due process, things like trials, they just went out the window.
Sacrificed for security.
Pretty much. Suspects weren't individuals needing a fair hearing. They were just enemies to be contained. Guilt was often assumed, based on flimsy evidence or just association.
And fear let them get away with it.
Exactly. The fear of Voldemort was so intense, it allowed the Ministry to justify this systemic torture. And society, by and large, seems to have accepted it as a grim necessity. It just became part of the system.
Okay, so fear opens the door to unchecked power. And that power builds a system designed to break people. Grim picture.
Very.
But that leads to the next question, right? If that's what happens inside Azkaban, who actually ends up there? And maybe more importantly, who doesn't? Because it sure doesn't feel like justice is blind in this world.
Not at all. That connects directly to this really obvious two-tier system. It's heavily weighted by money, by status, by, blood purity politics.
Right, like the Malfoys.
The perfect example. After both wars, everyone knew where their loyalties lay. Undeniable ties to Voldemort.
Yeah, pretty clear.
But did they face real consequences? Not really. They managed to, donate to the right people, pull the right strings, maybe claim they were under duress.
Bribe their way out, essentially.
Or use their influence, yeah. Their old name, their connections, it seemed to shield them. They walked away relatively unscathed time and again.
Which is just infuriating when you think about it. So justice is basically up for sale, or at least negotiable for the elite.
It certainly looks that way. Now, contrast that with someone like Hagrid.
Oh, Hagrid, yeah.
Fundamentally good, loyal to a fault.
Yeah.
But his life, plagued by disproportionate punishment, kicked out of school, wand snapped, forbidden from using magic openly.
All because of who his mother was?
Exactly. what the sources call bloodline prejudice. Because he was half-giant, he was automatically suspect, ostracized, denied opportunities. It wasn't just personal bias. It was systemic discrimination baked right in.
And this prejudice, this hierarchy, it goes way beyond just human wizards, doesn't it? You mentioned blood status, but it feels broader than that, like a whole caste system.
I think that's a fair way to put it.
Yeah.
It really functions like a deeply stratified society, and not just among humans. Look at how non-human magical beings are treated.
Like house elves.
House elves, legally enslaved, bound to serve families without pay, with almost zero rights. Their freedom depends entirely on the whim of their masters.
It's actual literal slavery, not a metaphor.
No, it's disturbingly real within that world. Dobby wanting a sock isn't just quaint. It's about escaping literal bondage.
That's, yeah, deeply uncomfortable when you think about this world we often idealize.
It's not just elves. What about the goblins?
Right, the bankers.
Skilled, crucial to the economy, but denied the right to carry wands. In a world where a wand is the symbol and tool of power.
It basically makes them second-class citizens.
Effectively, yes. It denies them full agency. Their rebellions, Grubhook's actions, they make more sense when you see them as reactions to being systematically marginalized.
Okay. And then werewolves. Like Lupin.
Another perfect example, Remus Lupin. Kind, brilliant, brave, but condemned because of something he couldn't control.
The registry, the lack of jobs.
Exactly. Treated as an outcast, forced into poverty and secrecy simply because of his condition. It's classic othering, using an inherent trait to justify legal and social discrimination.
When you lay it all out, these aren't just anomalies. They're features, not bugs of the system.
That's the key takeaway. And what's so potent, and maybe uncomfortable, is how these fictional systems echo real history.
How so?
We'll think about things like colonial legal systems that rank people by race, or Jim Crow laws in the U.S. South.
Right, segregation, voter suppression.
Yeah, not outright slavery anymore, but a whole web of laws and social norms designed to maintain white supremacy and deny rights to Black Americans. Or think about apartheid South Africa, where racial hierarchy was brutally encoded into law.
So the wizarding world is kind of holding up a mirror.
An uncomfortably honest mirror, at times. It shows how easily societies can normalize discrimination, build oppression right into their laws, and have the people in power barely notice or even justify it.
That definitely casts a shadow over the magic. And, you know, the part that really gets me, the most chilling part maybe, is what happens after Voldemort's finally gone. You'd expect this huge change, right? A reckoning. Tearing down the old corrupt systems, building something better, fairer.
But the sources are pretty clear. Fundamentally, nothing changes.
Nothing.
Not in terms of these deep structures. There's no big truth commission, no wizarding Nuremberg trials for the collaborators or the ministry officials who oversaw abuses.
Azkaban stays.
Azkaban stays. They swap the Dementors for Aurors as guards, but the prison itself, the lack of focus on due process it represents, that seems to remain. The story just jumps ahead.
Yeah, the epilogue. Happy families at the train station.
Exactly. Smiling kids, end of story. All that systemic rot just gets swept under the rug.
So not a clean break at all, more like papering over the cracks.
It's a very good way to put it. And this lack of fundamental reform is, again, where it feels disturbingly real.
How do you mean?
History shows us this pattern all the time. You defeat the dictator, you win the war, but the oppressive institutions, the ingrained biases, they often stick around.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about the U.S. Civil War. Slavery ended, which was monumental, but Reconstruction. It ultimately failed to dismantle white supremacy. You got black codes, Jim Crow, decades more of systemic oppression. The form changed, but the core inequality persisted.
Okay, I see.
Or look at the fall of dictatorships in, say, Latin America or Eastern Europe. Sometimes the secret police, the corrupt judiciary, the old networks of power, they just adapt. They don't vanish overnight.
The machinery of oppression outlives the person running it.
Often, yes. Because it's woven into the fabric of society, the laws, the culture. So in that sense, the wizarding world's failure to reform is depressingly realistic.
So the real tragedy isn't just the war itself. It's that they won, Harry won. But they inherited a society that still basically sanctions torture, ignores due process, and is built on systemic oppression.
That's it, exactly. Harry defeated the figurehead of evil, Voldemort. But the world he saved, still deeply flawed in its foundations. The systemic issues, that rotten core, it's still there.
So what does this all mean then?
I think it means that taking down the tyrant, the obvious bad guy, might actually be the easier part. relatively speaking.
Easier than what?
Easier than the much harder, slower, less glamorous fight against the ordinary, everyday injustices, the ones we've allowed to become normal. The biases, the inequalities, the cruelties that just blend into the background unless you're the one suffering from them.
Wow. So that bigger battle for real justice, it had barely begun when the books ended.
In many ways, yes.
Right.
Both in their world and perhaps as a lesson for ours. It's a constant process, questioning what seems normal.
Yeah. That's powerful. And a bit unsettling, like you said. We started thinking about Voldemort's defeat as his ultimate triumph. But this deep dive shows a wizarding world where the justice system was, and apparently remained, full of holes, built on torture, prejudice, lack of due process. And it didn't just disappear when the good guys won.
It persisted.
So maybe the final question for all of us listening is, what does it take for a society, any society, to really face and dismantle its deepest injustices? And are we as good at spotting the rotten core in our own world as we are in a fantasy story?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
It really is something to think about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep